Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl and welcome to Davos in Switzerland. Well, we've come to take a look at the brand new Cupra Ateca ABT. Now, ABT, or ABT, but it's a family name, so the pronunciation is ABT, is a German performance company. So Cupra have teamed up with them to take a standard Cupra and make it, well, just a little bit more spicy, shall we say. So, let's say your partner's bullied you into getting an SUV. You've made your peace with it, you've lived with it, so you've decided that you can get a Cupra, which is just a little bit more spicy than a standard Ateca. But let's say you want to take it a step further. Enter ABT. What they do is they take the Cupra that you have bought from Seat and they will make a couple of modifications. There are two different levels. You can either have more power added to the engine, that takes it standardly from 300 to 350 horsepower, or you can have the next package up, which will not only give you that, but will also uprate the suspension and drop the overall height of the car. Does that make a difference to how it drives? Is it worth spending that extra money to get a little bit more bang for your buck? We're going to take a closer look and find out. And just to give you a little bit of a spoiler for what's to come, maybe we can talk Geordie Janae into taking us out round the snow to show us just what this car can really do. Since we couldn't floor the car out on the snow for the best exhaust sound, let's start with a comparison of the exhaust notes in dry conditions, comparing the standard Cupra Ateca with a normal sports exhaust and the optional Akrapovic exhaust you can only get with the limited edition. So, here's the standard Cupra. And here's the Akrapovic. Stylistically, you're not going to notice a huge amount of difference in the ABT from the standard Cupra Ateca. The reason being that this is almost an after-sales service, but it's being done with and in cooperation with Cupra. So you buy your standard Cupra Ateca and then it goes off to ABT for modification. So just to look at one from the front on, you would never know any difference at all. And I think that's part of the appeal. But once you get round the side, things start to change. 4 meters 32 in length or 172 inches. This car has exactly the same dimensions as a standard Cupra Ateca. Well, the Cupra is actually a very aggressively styled car anyway. It wants to suggest sportiness and dynamism in its standard situation. But here, a couple of things have changed. I think for my taste, they work really well visually. As you can see immediately looking, the suspension has been dropped by 25 to 30 mil, and that significantly reduces the visual height of these wheel arches. So make sure that doesn't mess with the overall aesthetic of the car. We have unique ABT 20-inch rims. In combination with these snow tyres, I think that makes for a very nice side visual. Nothing radical has gone on back here either. But of course, don't forget it is a Cupra, so it is that much more sporty than a standard Ateca. You still have these nice standard Cupra exhaust ports. And just to let people know you did spend the extra, there's a nice small ABT logo. Just so those who know will still know. Let's take a look and see what's underneath the bonnet. What you're looking at right there is, to all intents and purposes, the same as the standard Cupra Ateca engine, and that is a 2-litre TSI 4-cylinder. Now, standardly, when you buy this car, it's going to produce 300 horsepower and 400 newton meters of torque. That all combines to produce a top speed of 247 kilometers per hour and a 0 to 100 time of 5.2 seconds. But after ABT have gotten into it, you're going to be getting a 0 to 100 speed of 5 seconds, a top speed of 255 kilometers per hour, 440 newton meters of torque, and an additional 50 horses, bringing you in at 350 horsepower. Now, if you're looking at this engine and thinking, but this looks suspiciously similar to what I would expect from a standard Cupra Ateca, other than this rather fetching badge that they fitted to the front, most of what has happened here considers taking into account how the electronic management system of the engine functions. So you're not structurally changing what the engine does or any physical dimension of it, only how it performs and behaves. So what some people used to call chipping, I think that's effectively what we're talking about. You can see the engine control unit right here. So that really does manage to wring the most practical use out of this car. What do I mean by that? Well, if you speak with an engineer, they'll always tell you that there is usually a little extra power that can go into getting dragged out of these engines, but you want to make sure that you're not damaging the way the engine performs or the lifespan of the car in doing it. So ABT have maximized what this engine can deliver, and hopefully we'll be able to see the benefit of that once we take it for a drive. Let's take a very quick look inside. Now, if you're not familiar with the standard Cupra Ateca, which to all intents and purposes, as far as the interior goes, this is, the best way to describe it is a standard Ateca with sports, and more sports added. So everything about the visual aesthetic of this car and its practical experience should lend you to think it's just that much more sporty, dynamic, punchy, and I think it's fair to say youthful as well. So if you take a look at those seats, you can see that they are just that much more than you would expect from a standard Ateca. If you are familiar with Cupra from beforehand, nothing has changed here. Again, this is a standard Cupra Ateca that has only experienced a modification with the engine and with the suspension. If you're watching this thinking, come on, Brian, we want details, we want more information, please watch some of our Cupra Ateca reviews. We have done several and in great detail. This is all about the ABT version of this car. Well, as you can see from our surroundings, it's a little bit snowy and icy out here. And as much as I think that Seat and Cupra like me, I'm not so sure how much they would if I take their one and only ABT and put it into an ice bank. So I think the best thing we can do is find the right person to show us what this car can really deliver. And that would be Geordie Janae. We've been joined by Geordie Janae, who is the brand ambassador for Cupra. And the reason that that's very important is that, as you might be able to see, here in Davos, there's a little bit of snow on the ground. Now, the problem with bringing out a special edition performance vehicle to test is that obviously you have to be very careful how you drive it. So, who's a better person to bring us out and to show us what this car can achieve than a man who has raced in the World Touring Car Championship? Not satisfied with that, he also has done 24-hour Le Mans and recently racing with the TCR. So, a pretty qualified expert to show us exactly what a difference that lowered suspension and those extra horses make under this bonnet. Geordie, snow, favourite surface to drive on? How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel really happy because it's a good fun and it's conditions that are very different from what I normally drive at home. So everything that is different is a challenge, and as a challenge with such a sporty car like this one, it's really a good mood and a good opportunity for me.
Now, you've spent possibly more hours in the Cupra Ateca having fun testing it, driving it in different challenging environments than almost anybody else. So you must be ideally placed to tell us in immediate terms of handling what a difference has been made by apps to this car.
Well, it's let's say that we have a very good base with a Cupra Ateca. It's a car that performs really well, but there's always room for some improvements. An app that's very specialist in making cars perform more has gone to some particular places and managed to extract a little bit more sportivity and a little bit more performance out of that car, either in the engine as in the chassis.
So to start with, before we really get going, we're just going to have a look around the roads and find some really suitable areas to do a little bit of handling. I think that would be a great opportunity. Jordi, can you give us some advice in terms of what we should be looking for in how best to drive safely on snow and ice with our cars?
Well, we have, again, a big advantage on the Ateca. We have a driving mode that we can select, and electronically we have some programs to use maximum safety on the car and maximum performance in any different conditions. And we have a specific one for snow, where all the ABS, all the electronic stability programs, all the suspension is especially tuned in order to get us the maximum safety and maximum performance. It's not the case when we go to asphalt, then we ask the car to perform in a different way. And that's one of the big characteristics of the Ateca. Is a car that adapts to any condition, and we can always have the best out of this chassis, this engine, this gearbox.
All right, so you've got years and years of experience of driving everything, some good, some not so good. We're not all lucky enough to have a Cupra Ateca parts in our driveway at the moment. If you don't have those assistance systems to help, what are we particularly looking for in how to handle our standard, cheap, nasty cars in these kind of conditions?
Well, any car, even a good car like this one, but when you drive on snow, basically we have to anticipate a lot, because all the reactions on the car will happen later. So if we have to accelerate, we should anticipate, be smooth, give some time the car to grip, the car to find the right position, and try to be smooth, basically. Smooth and look far in order to anticipate a little bit in all your reactions. That's the safest thing. And at the end, it's also a good way when you want to go fast, to go faster, because you have the car in the right place, you accelerate in the right moment, and then the performance of the car it's also better. So it's be calm, think with some time, and give time to the car to react to your orders.
And what's the best thing to do if, despite your most careful approach, you find that the car is starting to slip? What's the best thing to do?
Well, don't panic, basically, and use your eyes to go where you want to go. So if you look for if your car is sliding, you're going sideways, don't look at the front of the car, or don't look at the tree that you're going to crash in a few seconds. Try to look where you want to go, and the reactions of your hands, the reactions of your feet will probably help you to escape from this bad moment.
That's a really good tip. I think one of the most common areas where people run into difficulty when they're driving their cars in snow and ice are when they step into a car that they're not familiar with. So its reaction times, the way it behaves, its grip, they're all a little different from what you're used to. And some of that applies in this car today, because obviously once you lower the suspension on a vehicle, it significantly changes the handling dynamic. Even at this speed, can you feel differences with this car over the standard Cupra?
In the snow, honestly, you have to be really a very smooth and very precise driver to feel that difference. Obviously, you change the roll center, so that will affect a little bit the handling of the car. But the biggest difference, obviously, is when you really stress the car, when you have a lot of grip, and in dry conditions is where you make most of this benefit, which at the end of the day is most of the people use the car in dry conditions, and there is where you're going to get a little bit improvement if you aim for the sporty driving condition.
Okay, so if you're one of Jordi's countrymen or women and you're living in Spain, don't worry about this. Probably you'll be fine. But if you live in Switzerland, where we are right now, well, I think we need to find some slightly more challenging driving circumstances so you can feel at home.
If we have a closed area, then we can stress a little bit more our car, our performance.
We're very lucky because of the weather. There was some question as to whether we were going to be able to access this part of the hill. But fortunately, we have a closed road, which really means that Jordi can show us exactly what we can do.
Not 100% sure.
should say at this point, this is a mark of what we do for you guys. So all the other journalists, they're eating lunch because people are still preparing the roads, the tracks, everything. We say, no, we don't need any food. Let's get out there and see what the car can do. This is not my first time in Switzerland, but it is my first time at Davos, obviously a place that is famous for the World Economic Forum that they have here. And I always wondered what those guys are doing. And now I understand. They're not talking about the economy or matters of the globe. They're driving around the mountain ranges, having the best time imaginable. That's what they're doing. You got to wonder, what did Greta drive while she was up here? Come on, she had to have a go with something, right? There are a lot of awesome electric cars around about now.
Yeah.
How long before we see our first fully electric Cupra?
Not long ago. There's some work on the way. So for sure, not long ago.
Awesome. So we start off in sports mode?
Yes, I think it's better sports or Cupra, even though for safety, as I said, and for traction, the snow condition would help. But if we're going to have fun, it's better to go in the more sportive mode. And
so exactly what is changing in the setup of this car when you put it into Cupra mode?
We have some changes in many areas. Suspension, the car is a bit harder. That's why for snow maybe not ideal. But for the differential mode, it will help us a little bit more. In the way the ABS acts, also it's a little help. The feeling of the steering wheel is different. The feeling of the throttle is different. All this will make us a bit more fun.
Well, fun for us in the front. We'll have to see how Thomas gets on in the back. Here we go.
Okay. I also do another thing, which is I will disconnect the ESC in order to make it a bit more fun. And we take a look at how the conditions are. So let's go for it. So from now on, if I put too much power, the car will start drifting. But you see that it's always a very nice condition where the traction is going always to the tire that has more grip. But now obviously it's me that has to be careful and don't make any mistake with it. It's not bad for a road car, huh?
You have driven in any of the 24-hour races where it snowed?
Well, in the Nürburgring, in the Nordschleife, we had not snow itself, but we had a lot of ice on the track. That was a very tricky condition, especially with slick tires.
Wow, you did not have time for a change.
No, we had to. It's so long corner, so long lap that we had no time to change till I came back. So for a few kilometers, I had to handle with the slicks on the icy conditions.
Honestly, was that frightening?
A little bit, because Nürburgring is so special, it's so fast that these conditions really make you work very hard.
Well, hopefully there's nobody else on this closed road who's going to make us challenged for how we're enjoying it. You really can feel a lot, or I think you can in terms of the ride, that lowered suspension. It feels a lot more dynamic. Does that translate to the driving experience as well?
Well, everything that makes the car lower and less shock absorber movement, that will give us a faster reaction. So it's less time between I press the brake and this weight goes to the tire. And even in conditions like this, which are very critical, you see that the car is really strong and low and gives me a good feeling.
This is great. I was saying to Jordi before how I would love to be able to drive the car up here like this, but one, honestly, I don't have the technical skill, but two, I cannot take the risk with this car in these conditions, and it is such fun to be able to come out and to see how these roads can be driven. Now, we don't have special tyres, I should say, for this experience. These are the standard 20-inch Cupra Ateca Pirelli tyres, yes?
Well, it's a snow tire, but nothing special. It's a tire that anyone can can buy for himself. So it's a snow reality tire.
The traction feels really good on these roads, and they're not prepared in any way, are they? There's no salt, no grit, no nothing here.
No, we just try to remove some snow in order to go by, and that's it.
Well, not everybody's lucky enough to have their own portable, friendly Geordie Janae sitting in their house, just waiting until the weather conditions do this so they can take their car out and really have some fun driving it. So for the rest of us mere mortals, how should we behave when we're driving in this kind of environment? Well, if you haven't had the opportunity to drive the snow mode on any of the Volkswagen Group vehicles, I can tell you it really is absolutely fantastic. Yes, okay, it's not going to be as much fun as turning all the assistance systems off, but it does, as you might expect, exactly the reverse of that. It heightens the responsiveness of all of those systems, making your car a lot safer to drive in snowy and icy conditions. And it really delivers. It's a lot more secure on its feet than you would standardly expect from the experience of your everyday regular car of driving when the conditions suddenly and dramatically change. So, all of that said, is the apt Cupra Ateca any different in the real world from the standard? Well, clearly the answer to that is a resounding yes. Now you're going to have a lot more power and a lot more dynamism in terms of how the engine interacts when you put your foot down, but even around town, everyday driving like this, it feels a lot more agile and dynamic, and the reason for that is that uprated sport suspension and the decrease in ride height. Now logically, the payoff for that often would be comfort, but I have to tell you, I'm not noticing any significant difference. Although while you're driving on snow and ice, it is a particularly smooth driving experience, so possibly I'd need to get onto a slightly rougher road to really feel the bumps. But when Geordie was throwing us around the corners, and that was with everything switched off, it was still a surprisingly comfortable driving experience, even for Thomas sitting in the back. So, got to be quite impressed with that. So who should be buying the apt version of this car? Well, for me it really comes down to performance. If you like the idea of an Ateca, but you need it more sporty, then you look at the Cupra Ateca. If you like the idea of a Cupra Ateca, but you want it more sporty, then that's where apt comes into play. They basically will take this car and enhance the experience of driving it as much as you can reasonably do without taking some extreme decisions about how it behaves. The end result is a car that has all the refinement and comfort that you would expect from the Cupra Ateca, but just that little bit more. And for that to really get the best out of your driving experience, well, unless you're a Geordie Janae style driver, you're going to need the roads to be just that little bit drier. Now we're back at the standard Cupra Ateca, and we just wanted to give you a feeling of quite what a difference that apt transformation makes. So you can see we have the height back here because this is the standard suspension, so 25 to 30 mil bigger than the apt version, and these of course the 19-inch standard Cupra wheels. We've switched back to the standard Cupra just so we can show you how the driving differs between this and the apt version. But before we get onto that, let's have a quick look at this. Now, interestingly, the standard entrance level Cupra comes with the infotainment system with buttons on either side. This is an uprated version which is digital. Now, I'd be really interested to hear what you think about that, but I can honestly tell you I much prefer the tactile physical nature of the actual physical buttons being either side. I've used both systems. I think the other one's better, but please tell me if you disagree with that, because I'm always keen to hear about people who are fans of modern digital transformation. Now, something that's well worth pointing out here, which you will be more than familiar with if you're familiar with the Cupra, is this. This is the inductive phone charging tray. Now, at the moment you don't have the option within the brand for wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, but you do have Bluetooth audio. As you can see, this is an S10 Samsung, and there's plenty of room for one of the larger iPhones here. It sits really nicely there. Connecting the Bluetooth the first time is a little bit of a faff, but once you've done it once, it will reconnect effortlessly every single time you get in your car. And honestly, it's so much of a pleasure just being able to throw your phone in there and not worry about cables. I don't think you're going to miss out on the Android Auto experience in the meantime. But if you really want to have it, you just connect to one of these two sockets and away you go. Now, well worthwhile having a quick note as well about the standard fuel efficiency of this car. As you can see here, overall at the moment, we are recording a fuel efficiency number of 10.1. What's really interesting is even with that extra power tweak on the ABT, we were still only producing fuel efficiency of around about 11. So you can think in terms of it being around about 10% less efficient, but you are getting a lot more performance for that. Now, I thought you might find it fun to know that when we were driving around with Geordie earlier, we managed to rock up at around about 18 litres for every 100 kilometres driven. Well, I don't know about you, Thomas, but that seems like good value for money to me. So let's take this out and have a quick look and see how it compares. I think the first thing to note about the Cupra Ateca, as I have said before, you do get them very nicely equipped right from the get-go. So although the sticker price, base entry level, €44,000 is a lot, you are getting a lot of car for that. If you're interested in the limited edition version of the Cupra, Thomas has done a really good review of that. You can see that and we will link to it in the comments below. Now, whilst I think that's a really exciting version of the Cupra, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that that's quite worthwhile spending the money on those exhausts. And I have to tell you that Cupra are very excited about them. So if you have seen them, listened to them, I'm really keen to know what your opinion of them is. But meanwhile, back to this car and the ABT. Well, key difference for me is actually surprisingly noticeable. Whereas when I drove the ABT, I didn't instantly recognize any difference in comfort, I immediately recognize a difference in handling on this car. I'm not driving at speed, I'm only driving slowly through snow-covered roads, but there is a lot more padding to the drive. And that's not to say necessarily comfort, but a little more roll. The ride height definitely feels significantly greater, and there's just a bit more springiness. No question in my mind at all, if I was taking one of them off-road, this is the one I want to be doing it in. But if I want taut country road driving, absolutely the ABT every single day of the week. Now, clearly, given the nature of what I'm driving around, we're really not going to be able to make a fair comparison on the speed and acceleration of this car. But if you've driven a Cupra, you will know they are no slouch at all. So unless you're really a demanding driver, you're going to get a very pleasing driving experience from the standard Cupra Ateca anyway. But it really is nice to note just what an impact those ABT modifications have on the drive of this car. Thomas, are you feeling that as a passenger too?
Really?
Honestly, yeah.
No.
Interesting.
No.
Now that goes to show you how much feedback you're getting through the steering and the pedals, which obviously you don't experience as a passenger.
Yeah.
But you're not experiencing a little more in the way of body roll?
No. When I'm sitting here next to you, I feel nothing. Probably really when you are sitting at the steering wheel and self-driving, you will feel it. But for me, no, honestly.
Well, there you go. Now, in fairness, I know Thomas a little bit and I know how much he enjoys his driving. So really, unless he's throwing this car around and getting the most out of the driving experience, I don't know how committed he's going to be to understanding just what a difference that's making. But I think it does stand testament to the fact that the Cupra is very much a driver's car. So if you're thinking, I'd love to be able to go with the special edition model, but really, I think I'm going to need to stick with the standard, the average Cupra Ateca. Well, you know what? I've put a lot of miles into the standard Seat Ateca, the Cupra Ateca, and also I drove all the way here from Zurich in the ABT version, so I have a good basis for comparison. And I can tell you that there is nothing to disappoint you in the standard Cupra Ateca model. It's so nippy, it's so much fun to drive, it just puts a huge smile on your face. But if you want to have just a little bit more, maybe it's worth your while to look at the ABT. Now let's have a brief talk about pricing. So what is all of getting the best out of your Cupra going to cost you? Pleasingly, I think not as much as you might be expecting. Now, the Cupra Ateca is not the cheapest car in the world. To begin with, its entrance price, and these prices are roughly accurate for the German market, you're talking about a base price for a Cupra Ateca of 44,000 euro. But if that makes you raise eyebrows, don't forget that Cupra are designed to give you a lot of built-in features, so you don't have to add on. So when we're talking about pricing, you're already talking about very well-equipped cars. So the base level price you would expect to pay for the Cupra Ateca is 44. The apt modification is after that sale. There are two different levels. The first level, which increases the horsepower of the engine and the Newton meters of torque available to you, comes in at around about 2,000 euro. The second level, which includes the lowered suspension and the change of the springs, that's an extra 4, so that will be total 6,000. So the total cost of this car, which is an Ateca Cupra with the apt modification, comes in at around about 50,000 euro. Now, and this is where it gets slightly more confusing, if you're comparing that to the new available limited edition Cupra Ateca, that's coming in at around about 52,000. Again, that has a lot of different features. So how do you decide which one to go for? Well, the first thing to consider is that as far as I'm currently aware, there is no limit on the amount of Cupra Atecas you can get apt to modify. So this package should be available on an ongoing basis, and for 6,000 you have everything you need thrown in. If you go with the limited edition, there are only 1,999 of those cars available, and half of those are totally committed to the German market. So clearly it's going to be harder to get one of those. This is where things start to get slightly more complex, because if you look only at the figures, then it will tell you that the limited edition has a 0 to 100 speed that is faster than this. And that doesn't make a huge amount of sense, because this has more horsepower than the limited edition. Well, the reason for that is that the apt version is only focused on improving the available power, where the limited edition changes the responsiveness. So you're only going to notice that difference when you're doing a time trial on speed. Does that sound confusing? Put very simply, this is how it works. The standard Cupra Ateca has a 0 to 100 speed of 5.2 seconds. This car, the apt version, has a 0 to 100 speed of 5 seconds, and the limited edition 4.9. But in real world driving, this car is going to be faster and more responsive. So if what you're interested is a purely dynamic driving experience, you should probably be looking at the apt modification. If what you're looking for is a total package of a unique car, you should probably be looking at the limited edition. How do I feel about it? Well, I think the limited edition's a really great piece of kit, but I have to say, spending an extra 3,000 only on special exhaust ports, well, that's not quite my taste, although a lot of enthusiasts tell me that the sound is really quite something that they are prepared to pay for. Me, well, I'm all about that drive. So I'm going to go apt all the way. I think what you get out of this car for that extra 6,000 in spend is a lot of extra driving dynamic, and at really no cost that I can detect in terms of comfort and enjoyable ride once you have it in standing conditions around town. Now, I think personally the Cupra Ateca, just standardly as it comes off the line, is a pretty great car. At its price point, there really isn't anything that I can think of that immediately and obviously compares. But that's never going to be quite enough for some people. And I would say to those people, you really should give this a test drive. Because if you like the Cupra Ateca, then you're really going to like this. I hope you've enjoyed watching our quick look. Please, if you have any comments or questions, pop them below. We hope we'll see you again soon.